Before I begin, let me tell you, what you're about to hear isn't just a story. It's a path I never expected to walk, one that changed me in ways I'm still coming to understand. The morning my son walked through the door after months away, I thought it was just a surprise visit. But what he carried with him that day unraveled everything I thought I knew about my family, and about myself. Before we dive in, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'd love to see how far this story reaches. And if you enjoy heartfelt stories about life and rediscovery, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe. It really helps more than you realize, and I'd love to share more stories like this with you. So let's start at the beginning. It was a crisp autumn morning. The wind chased golden leaves across the driveway while I stood at the kitchen sink rinsing my coffee cup. The house was quiet, the kind of peaceful silence you grow to love in your 40s and 50s, just the hum of the radio, the smell of coffee, and the comfort of being home. For nearly 8 months, I had lived alone since my son Michael had moved to another state for work. At 27, he seemed certain about his future, certain about who he was becoming, or so I thought. So when I saw his car pull up outside unexpectedly, I froze. No call, no text, nothing to say he was coming. I tightened my robe and stepped onto the porch. Michael climbed out, looking tired, worn in ways I hadn't seen before. His hair was longer, unkempt, and his eyes carried something heavy. "Mom," he said softly, forcing a smile. I stepped forward, heart racing. "Michael, are you all right?" He hugged me, and it wasn't just a polite hug. It was long, desperate, the kind that says I need you right now. I didn't ask questions. I let him in, poured coffee, and watched him sit at the kitchen table, the same table where years earlier he had practiced spelling words and learned how to peel apples without breaking the skin. Finally he looked up, hazel eyes steady but uncertain. "I found someone," he said. I smiled, thinking he meant a girlfriend. "That's wonderful, honey. You didn't need to make it sound so serious." But he shook his head. "It's not that, it's about us, about Dad." The words landed like ice. My husband David had been gone for 5 years, killed in a car accident. Clean life, no secrets, at least that's what I believed. Michael pulled a folded letter from his jacket and slid it across the table. My hands shook as I opened it. Handwritten words, an address in Tennessee, and a name I didn't recognize. "I sent in a DNA test," he said quietly, "and I learned something we never knew. Mom, I think I have a half-brother." That night I barely slept. The letter was simple, almost gentle, written by a woman named Margaret who said she had known David long before I did. She hadn't asked for money or forgiveness, only a chance to reconnect, a chance to tell the truth. By morning I knew I had to see for myself, not just for Michael but for me. We packed a bag and drove south. The hills rolled past us, glowing with autumn colors. We spoke little, but silence was easier than words. Hours later, a narrow country road led us to a farmhouse outside Nashville. Flowers lined the porch, and a red rocking chair swayed gently in the breeze. My heart pounded as the front door opened. Margaret stepped out, about my age with silver threads in her sandy hair. She smiled with quiet relief. "Michael," she said softly, embracing him, then her eyes found me. "You must be his mother." "Yes," I said, clutching my purse. "I'm Clea." There was no judgment in her eyes, only understanding. Inside, her home smelled of cinnamon. Family photos lined the walls, and one nearly stopped my heart. David, young, smiling, his arm around Margaret. We sat at her kitchen table and talked. Not about betrayal, not about anger, but about David. About how 2 women had loved the same man in different times, never knowing about each other. And then Margaret called down the hall. "Caleb, come meet someone." A young man stepped into the room. Tall, steady, with eyes just like Michael's. My breath caught. "This is Michael," Margaret said softly, "and this is his mother, Clea." Caleb shook my hand, polite and calm, and in that moment the room changed. This wasn't about the past anymore, it was about what came next. The afternoon passed in conversation. Michael and Caleb compared stories. They laughed at small coincidences, shared gestures, quirks, even a similar laugh. Margaret and I sat quietly, watching 2 young men discover a bond that had always existed, just hidden. When it was time to leave, Margaret hugged Michael and whispered, "Thank you for finding us." Then she hugged me too, and in that moment I realized healing doesn't always come the way we expect. Sometimes it arrives as a new branch on the family tree. 2 weeks later, Michael returned with a spark in his eyes I hadn't seen in years. "Mom," he said, suitcases in hand, "I've been talking to Caleb. We're close. I thought maybe we could go back together." I smiled, tears welling. "Give me 20 minutes, I'll pack." That second trip wasn't about uncovering secrets. It was about building something new. Sitting on Margaret's porch under the stars, the four of us felt less like strangers and more like family. And for the first time since David's passing, I understood. Families aren't always what we expect. They don't always arrive when or how we want them to. But sometimes, through heartbreak and discovery, they come together in unexpected, imperfect, beautiful ways. That's when I realized this wasn't the end of a story. It was the beginning of a new one.